Involved in the Coal and Candle Bushfire Brigade when I was in my teens and early 20s, and then I was chair of the Hornsby-Ku-ring-gai Bushfire Management Committee in the early 90s. It wasn't until the late 90s that I got involved with the NCC bushfire program, and the first conference I attended was the 2000 conference. The NCC conferences have been really important in getting diverse views out there and having and stimulating debate. And then from that debate and from that knowledge that comes out from the excellent scientists that have and others who have been involved in the conferences, NCC, I believe, has been able to make a much better policy that covers a wide range of environmental issues.
Important things about the conferences is tapping into the knowledge, experience and research outcomes and sharing it with a wider group. And in fact the conferences are very good forums, because not only do we get some extremely good speakers over the years, but we also share and learn and advance our information through the contributions that people attending the conferences make. So it's a shared learning exercise as well as a talking heads exercise. I think very much that approach of having very well informed people presenting, but also people presenting with very diverse experiences, from captains of bushfire brigades through to people at the top levels of the agencies, and from the scientific community, have helped to cross-fertilise ideas, to encourage debate, and to, I think, develop a much more thoughtful attitude to best practice management.
When the conferences first started, the existing knowledge at that stage was fairly minimal. There were people had views and it worked in their area, or people knew what had worked in the past, and that is good knowledge, and you've got to build on that. But I think what's happened since the start of the NCC conferences is that there's been so much new research done that the existing knowledge has increased dramatically, and we're far better off and with the amount of knowledge we have, and it's much more easily disseminated.
Well, definitely from an Aboriginal perspective, where more recent conferences have actually involved Aboriginal people presenting, but I think we're giving a bit more weight now to views of Aboriginal people on land management, particularly those that are actually living on the land, views of the elders and things like that. But more broadly, I think the embracing of ESD principles has sort of crept into a lot of people's thinking, and even probably unconsciously to a lot of stakeholders. But I think there's a lot more caution about the environment from all those stakeholder groups when they actually plan to implement a fire.
I think that we've got more and more adept at presenting the information, but also there have been increased advances of understanding and knowledge, so we've been able to tap into a wider range of people with all sorts of different and new information, which has been very important. But we've also developed rapport with different groups, particularly with the Aboriginal community, which increasingly have made a contribution in conferences.
Gone from a more reactive to a more proactive approach to risk management, but more importantly for me, we're now much better acknowledging the beneficial role of fires in a lot of the communities where I guess frequent fire had been declared a key threatening process. So there was a lot of conservationists which were sort of focused on the prevention of fire in all communities, and that has changed now to one where they're a lot more accepting of the need for fire and its benefits.
Burning for biodiversity conservation has become far less controversial than it was 20 years ago. It is, I think, accepted that putting fire into the environment for ecological outcomes is an acceptable way of managing, and not only acceptable, it's one of the major tools in managing biodiversity.
My own views way back in the 90s were there was far too much indiscriminate burning going on, and I think that is a reality that there was. The fact that frequent fire was declared a key threatening process was a bit of a highlight to conservation groups that fire was a bad thing, and it's taken quite a while to get the message across that similarly infrequent fire in some communities should be almost a key threatening process when you start losing key species through a lack of fire to stimulate reproduction of those plants.
NCC, I think, will have a major role in hosting conferences into the future, because although there's a lot of work being done, it's NCC conferences that have been the main driver in disseminating that information, and is the only conference, to my knowledge, in Australia that specialises in environmental outcomes of fire.
For what started out as perhaps a tentative exercise through conferences, but with all the other aspects of its program, has been a very important contributor towards making sure that we have a best practice approach to management of fire and bushfire in our Australian community, and particularly I think it's important as our precious areas of bush are increasingly under pressure into the future.